Guys, there's a big difference between Zelda, one of the best games you'll ever play, that's running on ancient hardware. The Switch was underpowered and dated the moment it came out. Never mind 6 years later, or however long it's been. There's a big difference between Zelda, running at 30 frames per second, and a complete piece of shit that is Redfall, a first-person shooter that can barely hold 30 frames per second, which gives me a migraine anytime I play a first-person shooter that isn't 60 frames per second. While it's definitely not ideal playing Zelda at 30 frames per second, that's a concession I'm willing to make. Not only because it's not a first-person shooter, but because it's one of the best games ever made. Kinda like with Star Wars. I hate the fact that it's not running at 60 frames per second. And if it sucked, I would have dropped it like a hot bag of shit. But the truth is, it has something that Redfall doesn't. Redeemable qualities. At the end of the day, no matter who's making what, who's selling what, 30 frames per second in the year 2023 is unacceptable. I actually used to think that certain games, it didn't matter all that much. Today I realize that's bullshit. Every single game that's coming out in the year 2023 and beyond should have a 60 frames per second option. I don't want to hear the bullshit from these developers that 24 frames per second or whatever makes the game more cinematic, like in the Order 1886. We're buying these motherfuckers. We're the ones that are going to be playing these motherfuckers. Let us decide what is best for us, okay? And if you can't get your game to run at a stable 60 frames per second on PlayStation 5 or X Series X, that's likely a sign that you bit off more than you can chew. You gotta scale that shit back a bit. You obviously don't have the talent to match the scope of your game. Cut some shit out. Make the map smaller. Do whatever you gotta do to get that bitch to run at 60 frames per second. And so no game should get a pass in the year 2023 when it comes to launching at 30 frames per second, okay? But let's not act like Redfall on the Xbox Series X and the new Zelda running on old-ass motherfucking Switch is an apples-to-apples comparison. Another thing, Zelda was never marketed by Nintendo to run at 60, like Xbox did with Redfall. And Nintendo also never promised that the Switch was the most powerful console on the planet. Nintendo doesn't overpromise and underdeliver. It's so much easier to just hold Xbox accountable, and actually might lead to some good things in the future, rather than sitting here with all these strawmans, these bullshit comparisons, and what about this, what about that, these fucking mental retard gymnastics. It's just so tiresome. Have some fucking dignity.